Um, Lenny invited me to this a while ago, and I said, you know, we're not, when you talk innovation, a lot of you guys are coming here and thinking technology and things like that, and we are certainly not Luddites about technology, but we are experts in terms of brand, and what we've discovered is that brand has changed, and people have changed as to how they deal with brand, and we think that that needs to be taken into account when you look at certain innovative approaches, when you look at what you're doing with the data that you've got. And so I'm going to ask you to step into the Wayback Machine. Is that a reference that's too old for everyone in the room? But after my decades of experience, thank you, Todd. But not to 1900. What I want to do is I want to look at the year 2000, 100 years later, 14 years ago. We did a study. It looked at 1,847 products and services in Western Europe and in North America. And what we were looking for were points of differentiation. So we looked at lots of categories and lots of brands in categories. And what we discovered was that only 21% of those brands had any level of meaningful differentiation. That's not a good number. And that was down 10% in 2003. So the fact is that when you're out there and you're talking about who your brand is and what it's about, you have a lot of problems facing you. Now, this, I just said, you know, forget creeping commoditization. What you're talking about is galloping commoditization. I'm not a big fan, as you'll find, of awareness. I think you're all aware of stuff. I'm not a fan of satisfaction. I had lunch with someone, and I was talking about the fact that they did satisfaction measures, and I was like, yeah, talk to everyone that had a cell phone and was perfectly satisfied with it and then went over to Apple, to an iPhone. I mean, we see this stuff switching around, so these metrics don't work. The 4 Ps, I know everyone goes, yeah, okay, right, I know, that's what, you know, it's there, the product and the place, and we can't manage that anymore except for the fact that folks are living off trying to manage price. The issue regarding the product, in terms of innovation and things like that, is always a good story. Is there anyone here in the room who has a cell phone that does not have a camera? Yeah, I didn't think so. That's a good bar bet. I always win. You know, the fact is that it was Sanyo who put a $2 chip into the phone, mainly because we were looking for more value in terms of connectivity. It was emotional connection. It wasn't so much, oh, this is great, but also the fact that 43 days later, our client, Samsung, had their camera phone out. So the window, not to reference back, but for the decades, I was at the tail end of Don Draper, but you know, we used to have 2 years to be able to do stuff. Now, if you've got 30 days, you're lucky. Those things have become table stakes for us, and the consumer is more marketer than target audience anymore. I don't care how much outreach is going on. I don't care about all of the measurements in terms of I spent this much time and that much time. These folks are smart, and they have been for a long time. And I was being kind when I said they, for nearly 2 decades. I think you go back to 1985 and you have really smart people. You didn't have to wait for Time magazine. That used to be a printed thing that we bought at newsstands. You didn't have to wait for Time magazine to make the consumer the person of the century. Now, the issue is what works in terms of understanding the brand, okay? I'm not talking now about these technologies. All this stuff is really cool. Some I have to admit I think are a lot cooler than others. but that's because it fits into my own philosophy about this. And what we find works is emotional engagement. Now, anyone that wants to meet me in the parking lot afterwards and fight this out, I'm more than willing to do, but we totally, totally misuse the word engagement. Yes, you can be engaged with methods of outreach, you can be engaged with entertainment, but that is not emotional engagement, and it is not engagement with the brand. Which, if you're going to be a real pain in the rear end and you're doing any of this stuff, what you want is to see some return on investment of your efforts. I mean, that's where we come out. So, in 2007, we do a study, and I'm going to give you some context from some examples from that. We've been around for a long time, but we've been doing this study for 17 years. We talked to 50, 60,000 consumers annually. And in 2007, when we looked at what the rational stuff did, so that's 4P stuff that you all kind of went, yeah, okay, it's all the same. Most of the decision process was based on some sort of emotional bond created between the consumer and the product or service. So it was more emotional than it was rational. Rational stuff matters, but I'm going to show you how, in a lot of ways, it doesn't and how it shifted. And the fact is that if you look at this year's study, it's closer to 85-15. Why? Well, if you go to the 15% rational, lay out stuff in front of you. Go home and look and say, how is this really different? I mean, your buying habits are not always habitual. Sometimes they're habitual, but most of the time they're not. Most of the time there is something there that is functioning as an emotional link. And this Todd told we specialize in this. Just as an FYI, this, if I push the big red button, does it go back? Okay, I'm going to go back for a second. As much as I asked Lenny and Todd, they wouldn't give me the 2 hours that it normally takes to talk through a process that is very complex. Just saying. So if you want to, you either go to our site, or there is a YouTube channel that has movies, that talks about how we do stuff. I welcome you to do that. I don't have the time today. The model looks at a category ideal. We base that on an ideal because that's how you buy. I know you buy lots of stuff, but you do not buy cars the same way you buy cosmetics. And what drives and what is emotionally engaging within the category and within the brand will change inside of each one of the categories. And so we end up with 4 drivers that describe how people view the category, how they compare, how they will buy. That's critical, how they will buy. The drivers are made up of attributes, benefits, and values that we get from consumers. It's 100% consumer driven, which is really cool. Because then when clients say, well, I wouldn't have done that, I go, that's what the customer is doing. And they're validated. We've got 24/7 looked at how things ranked on the basis of emotional engagement, and they took the top highest 11 brands that we do of the 598 that year, and 10 of the 11 were found to be market leaders by them. Aquiton Capital Advisors did a study as well. They did something, we used to throw up an equation that our accounting firm says is perfectly legitimate, and what they found was that there were correlations between how people emotionally engaged with products and corporate profitability. Axiomatically, if you if you are engaged with a product, you ought to do good things and you ought to make money. And those were, we had 0.83 to 0.901, which are extraordinarily high. And I do this not because of Todd or because of Gail, but we've gone through the Advertising Research Foundation First Opinion Review, which is the only one in the world that looks at this stuff and tells you whether or not what you say you're doing, you are doing. So feel free to take a look. Now, 2013, the 17th annual year that we've done the loyalty and engagement study, I want to show you something. This is in mass merchandiser cosmetics. This is a great example, and I apologize to the men in the room. It's just such a great example, but it's not something you guys are going to, well, up to you. And I want to remind you that the drivers that I'm showing you for the category ideal are based on the values that consumers ended up putting there. It's a rigorous statistical analysis. It's on the site. It's on the YouTube piece. This is 2013. The heights of those bars are levels of expectation. It's from a benchmark of 100, so higher is better, higher is higher, higher expectations. And this is how the women who bought mass merchandiser cosmetics looked at the category. We had the first driver that was makes me look better. Well, that's okay, you know, I mean, for all the stuff that we've watched on TV and in magazines and online, that's all right. Confidence in the product. Brand value, that's a dollar figure, by the way, brand value there. And ingredients. Okay, fair enough. This is what it was last year. It was feel good and look good. It wasn't just make me look better. I felt better about myself. A trusted brand that knows me. And again, I'm just reminding you, I didn't name these things. I mean, we looked at things and had to put words to them. Innovative, nurturing brand for value. I mean, dollars figure in, but it figures in a different way. And effortless transformation. And if you look at the two side by side, the difference is pretty obvious. I mean, what we've discovered is that if you go back in and you look at the category, and then you also look at the brands in the category, all the aspects that were related to brand or emotional engagement disappeared. The brands that we include, which I think were about 13 or 14 of them, they are rated by people who have bought them. They are customers, customer loyalty engagement. And there was no statistical difference between the ratings in terms of how they met the ideal between one and the other. But not in the luxury category. This wasn't true in the luxury category. And that's, I mean, I think all of you, if you stop and think about luxury brands, you can find some resonating piece that's different from, I don't know, what General Motors was, the Acme car company of the 20th century. I mean, we knew what category they played in. But you say Mercedes-Benz, something different. And it didn't happen in the luxury category. Now, I just like this because people go, wow, it's an anomaly, or it's not me. That won't happen to my brand, not my brand. We're online. We're looking at mobile. This year alone, we identified 11 categories where aspects of emotional engagement have disappeared, where products evaluated by their own customers, this is what's critical, were statistically identical. And where you are with this, however you are measuring and whatever you're doing, if you're not factoring this in, If you are indistinguishable from one another, then you are interchangeable with one another, and therefore you're a commodity. And actually, this is something that we've talked about for years, is the fact that they're really not commodities. They're kind of placeholders. You all know the names. They play in a category, but you don't know them for anything other than shampoo, and that's difficult. I love this cartoon. Tom is just a genius. I mean, we talk about needs and things like that. We talk about innovation. We talk about lots of things, and the question is, what need does our brand fulfill if we only discount the crap out of it? And if you do that, you're not a brand anymore. And so the bottom line is, this is nearly 100% emotionally based in terms of brands now, or at least successful brands, and the way that you need to approach it, whatever the innovation. And by the way, a tip of the hat to the gamification, because it's a wonderful indirect way of getting to some of this, is what you need to do. The emotional engagement thing, I'm sorry, I'm running a couple seconds over, is not awareness. It's not interrupting me during the TV. It's not time spent. It's not attention to the thing. It is not entertainment. Lord help me, it's not entertainment. We'll just watch the Super Bowl every year and then watch sales afterwards. It isn't click-through sponsorships, promotions, or distribution, ubiquitous or not. It just isn't. What it is the creation of some bond, an emotional bond, an emotional engagement, and you need to do that. And if you don't, you get a big target pasted on your back, on your brand's back. And the smart brands are going to come after you. And that's it. Thank you very much. I'm sorry.